All right, thank you for that, Gino. And good morning to all of you who are here this morning. Today we're joined by, well, it was myself presenting. There's John. And for those who were here last week, if you just in the group chat, if you can just put in there if you were here last week, or is this your first session of this group, please just add it in there. Then we'll know where we're up to. As I said, John's here again this week. If you were here last week, he'll help out and have some input throughout the session and be answering your questions on the group chat and also in the question and answers. We've also got Gabriel here today from Pearson, who will also be helping out and answering any queries, and also just going over a bit of the emotional and centre, what do you call it? I've got slightly blank. Some of the
support.
Yeah, support. That's the word.
Yeah, that's right.
But some of the support we're offering to centres with the T-level this year and ongoing. While I'm introducing, I will be reading the group chat as I'm going, so sometimes I'll get slightly distracted, but don't worry about that. Today's session going on is the third out of 4, so we had A and B last week, which was really an introduction and just going into the core component. Well, today we'll be looking into the occupational specialisms. We'll look into more detail of those, even so we did mention them last time. And then tomorrow's session is the final one of this group, which is to look at the external assessments. So, starting off, I'm just going to quickly look here. So, that's it. I was just going to add that, John. So, John's just also added a quick question. So, to help and guide us through the session today, it's really important if we can just find out which occupational specialisms you are looking at delivering. That'll just give me a bit of guidance on what we also need to look at today. I know we did that last week as well. Now, as we know about you'll hopefully be aware of the T-levels as a new qualification. So most of you should be starting it last year, but there may be some people who have started this year. The occupational specialism is a part of the T-level where the learners will get a chance to specialise within a certain area of the construction T-level. You'll probably be aware there are 4 occupational specialisms. Now, throughout the event will be screen sharing, and I'll be using an awful lot of information from the Pearson website. Again, last week I ran through that, where we can find the information we need, and most issues you'll come up with will probably have an answer within the area of the T-level, or you can also put in queries and questions there if you're not in an event or you don't have the opportunity to get involved in some of the events. I'll say we'll have a word. Gabriel will have some input into that later about the events. So I'm just quickly going to do a screen share just to show you where I'll be going initially. So I'm going to go on the initial Pearson, just like I did last week, website, just to show you where to get it, because often people are not sure where to look. So we're going to go, and again, if you remember from last week, it's a couple of seconds before the share will come up, but hopefully any second now you should be getting something to do with the initial website. Hopefully that's come up. So if you go on the easiest way, and if you just go Pearson qualifications and drop down, click on the T-levels. There are 2 T-levels there. There's the construction and digital. We're doing construction. Click on the construction, and there is all the information you might need. Now, I'll be starting with the specification, which I already have up. So what I will do is I'll stop and reshare that now. Hopefully that stopped screen share, it has. And if you can get that document up, just have it ready for use, the specification, and we'll start with looking at that first. So I'm just going to go through a couple of pages of the PowerPoint. As you know, I don't use the PowerPoint hugely. It's mainly really a discussion, hopefully using the group chat as we go. But I'll just quickly go through the agenda for the whole session today. So we've got the introduction, aims of the session. I've already done a little bit of that. Practical tips and key focus of the occupational specialisms. A couple of practical tasks. We'll look at some of the new documents that have been produced for the occupational specialism. Most of these are generally for the civil engineering pathway. But again, I'm sure Gabriel will be able to update us, but I'm sure they'll be coming through soon for the building services and the surveying pathway as well. Any activity and then feedback and discussion. And again, at the end of the session, hopefully we'll have 20 minutes, half an hour to go through any specific questions or queries from any delegates. Because as we did last week, me and John will be hanging around for a bit just to, if there are any other queries. So, I've already mentioned this, but there are 4 occupational specialisms. Now, if I look now, commencing in 1 year, I'm just seeing we've got design and surveying in Bedford, we've got building services and civils in Solihull, we've got surveying and design, Lakes College, Western, surveying again, surveying. So looking at the occupational specialists at the moment, there's a lot of popularity with the surveying, as well as I'm sure last week last week we did have quite a few with the civils as well, and then slightly fewer it looks like for the building services. And again, I'm still hoping, but we will hopefully have someone who's willing to do some hazardous materials at some point. And I'd like to say good morning again from Egypt as well. Welcome. So today I will be probably spending most time on the civil engineering, but also with the surveying and design. We'll have a little look over the building services and, if we've got any time, a smattering of the hazardous materials. What I'll be doing now is going over to the specification. I think it's actually probably on the next slide, yeah. We've got a small area of the specification here. So how they're broken down, the occupational specialism, which is different to the core content, because the core content's is more knowledge content than the core, with the core having skill areas attached to knowledge content. So the specification is set the same for all the occupational specialisms, but this is an extract from the civil engineering. So the specialism is also broken down into areas where you'll analyse a problem, you'll then look at solving that problem, then you'll probably evaluate that, and we'll look at that as well throughout the specification. So initially here we've got a content area, there's health and safety, and then there's skills attached to that, and then sustainability, skills attached to that, project management, skills attached to that. And then we go there. So yeah, the easiest way to do this, I'm going to now share the specification with you. We've got a question and answer, 1 second. That's fine, no problem. And I'm going to screen share the specification and we'll have a look through it that way. So just hold with me 1 second. So T-level specification. Now, if you've got the T-level specification there yourself, if you open it in a separate window, you'll be able to flip through it a bit quicker than I am doing while I am running through it on screen, because there is, as we always have with technology, there will be a delay. So I'm just going to go to the very first part of it, which is page, am I through that one? Yep, that's civil engineering. I'll start with civil engineering. This is page 90 of the specification, or if you're on the PDF, it's page 100. So what we've just looked through there. So there's a content summary, and hopefully that's opened up now and you've all got a chance. again, there's a little introduction at the top of it as we do, but then it goes actually into the details of what we need to deliver as a centre to the learners. So, and you'll notice keywords in here, sort of task-specific risk management. We are relating with the occupational specialism and the T-level in general. It's a qualification that is related directly to an occupation or a role in employment. Therefore, everything is linked to either a role or a job. And this is something I think we talked about last week with the core content, and an area where learners struggle at first because they haven't got an overview of an entire role within a certain occupational specialism. So you'll talk about civil engineering. Initially, they'll struggle to adapt sort of a health and safety. It's easily looking generically at health and safety, but then applying it directly to a role or an actual activity is more complicated. And that's where the T-level is getting to. So as you can see with the health and safety, the learners will need to sequence and prioritise tasks within a civil engineering role or job. Now we'll look at in a second some of the student briefs that we've produced, which will help you in the delivery of this. There's project management. There's project management in a couple of the or most of the occupational specialisms. You'll also notice that did come up in the core content. So there's overlap there going from the core content into the occupational specialism. So it's quite important as well when you are looking at delivery to know which occupational specialisms you may be covering in the second year from your core content, and you can aim your teaching at that core content at the occupational specialism when you're covering the core content, but ensure that you don't go too much off-piste whereby you're not covering what's going to be going into the exams at the end of the first year. So it's just making a balance there of the different areas that you will be covering. Excuse me. If I am clearing my throat, I'm afraid I have got a little bit of the tree pollen's come out early this year, and I'm struggling a little bit at times. But I have taken me antihistamine, so I should be all right. But if I do clear my throat, I'm sorry about that. Now, this is an area we looked at last week, the maths. You can see that there's, as you'd expect, a lot more maths content within the civil engineering. And the core content does cover some maths, which will directly relate and go into this content within the civil engineering. Again, I'm just going through now. Once we've gone through, the whole specification is set out in this way. You've got your performance criteria, you've got your content, and you've got your skills. Then the content is broken down further. So what we've got is, hopefully you can see, but I'm on page 106 as the PDF, or page 96 of the specification. The knowledge aspects of the civil engineering is just highlighted there. You've got 12 areas of knowledge. You've got your health and safety, sustainability, project management, design, material properties, structural elements, maths, structural mechanics, mathematical techniques, geology and substructure beyond the core, setting out an earthwork. So it mentions in there, it's the stuff that's beyond the core, it means beyond the core content. We then have the skills and performance outcomes listed. Now these are separated now from the boxes above, and they're just put in separately. So you've got skills for performance outcome 1, and there's 17 skills associated with performance outcome 1. Again, I'm not going to now read through all these. because it would just waste everyone's time, but you can see them all there. So it's really important as a centre when you settle down, you first all get your teaching team together, as you discussed last time. You've then got to go through your content to see who will be delivering what aspects of the content. So again, just looking at the detailed content, you've got health and safety, sustainability, project management. Although it's related to civil engineering, you might not need a specialist in terms of a structural mechanic or a mathematician to deliver that area. So it's an area where one member of staff might be more suitable than another. You've then got to remember you've got your maths, your structural mechanics content. That content will have to be delivered by someone who has a very good understanding and knowledge of mathematics and structural engineering, as you'd expect. The other areas, or the other occupational specialisms, are also areas like that. So, as a first short task now, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to go back onto the presentation. Sorry, it's an odd situation. I'm not seeing exactly what you're seeing, so sometimes if I am flying around a little bit, it's because my computer's a little bit quicker than yours. So if there are issues with that, please just put something in the group chat to say, can you go a bit slow with the screen share, or I'm not getting a screen share, and then John will update me to say whether there's an issue with that. So what I want to do as a quick task is I've just been on to the occupational specialism there. You've also indicated which occupational specialisms you will be looking at delivering. I know we did this quickly last week, but are there any areas in terms of personnel resources where you think you will struggle, or where you may need to look at getting someone in to help with the delivery of an area of the occupational specialism? So we quickly looked at the civil engineering in there. If you can look at the surveying and the building services, I would say the hazardous materials, but again, no one is delivering that one at the moment. And say state areas where you feel it might be difficult, or you would need to look at hiring someone to deliver a certain area of that content. Or maybe you say, actually, I can't deliver that. I might just get a specialist in for a short while, also get someone to do a expert delivery on that from sort of a local construction project. So just for 5 minutes quickly, if you go onto the group chat and just put in personnel resources that you feel might be difficult, or you'd be looking at gaining over the next few months before you start delivering that, or if you're delivering the occupational specialism in a year, it gives you an extra year to deliver that. Or could you look at it by actually providing training for someone, or is it something Pearson might be able to do? So 5 minutes, quickly look into that. I'll quickly mute for a second. And can we get something in the group chat, please? Okay, that's fine. If no one's got anything to add to that, that's absolutely fine. In terms of, I've just got one comment there. So thank you, David, for that. But you feel you've got the right people in place, and I presume if you are delivering a certain occupational specialism, you'll hopefully have the staff in place. Now, as an addition to that, again, looking quickly through the specification, hopefully you've had time to look through before today. Are there any areas where you feel you would struggle in terms of resources on the delivery of the occupational specialisms? So just moving on, instead of staffing, the resources required. So on the
Matthew, can I come in? Sorry for interrupting,
Yeah.
Matthew. I was just wondering, because I did put a chat in earlier about a college that's pondering how to deliver multiple specialisms, and I was just wondering if, on the point of human and physical resources, if there are any centres that are planning both, for example, surveying and civil engineering, how would they handle that? Would it be two completely separate groups? And did you or John have any view as to whether anything is possible to co-teach across these, or are they so uniquely different that you'd have to have two separate groups?
That's a very good point. I'll first of all, yeah, from what Gabriel said there is, again, if anyone can add into the group chat, if they are delivering, I think if I look back now, the couple of colleges are delivering more than one. For example, Solihull's Building Services and Civils. Are you looking at would you be having completely separate cohorts and completely separate teaching teams, or would you be doing some crossover there? Yeah, as mentioned, as someone said about mass resources. Useful to have some, that's a good point there. Someone did mention last week about, are there any extra maths resources that we might be including from Pearson to help with the delivery and assessment? So
Yeah,
that's a good
question,
point.
isn't it? I will put that forward to see if there is in terms of budget for. I think that's an area where learners are going to struggle, isn't it? But I guess not necessarily specifically for the occupational specialisms. Could be for core as well, maybe. I don't know if you're thinking about core.
I think that's what. Yeah, I think Tim raised that last week. So it was when we were discussing the core. He did raise about the maths resources. So I presume this, with the maths and the occupational specialism, when learners have chosen to go into civils, hopefully it has been discussed. It's something to think about when learners are choosing an occupational specialism, if they have got a choice. There is going to be more maths content within the civil engineering, and also going forward within the civil engineering as well, with it as an occupation. Learners who do struggle with maths, maybe they need to think about maybe choosing a different route, because you do hopefully choose a route you are most able to deal with, really. As being a physicist initially and then going into maths, I enjoy civil engineering and watch the structural engineering. However, there's areas of construction where I'm less comfortable with. Yes.
I mean, there are quite a few in terms of the project stuff, and if you look at the occupational specialisms, the student brief for the civil engineering project, I think necessarily requires some maths and some calculations. I'm just scrolling through it now, but I'll send a. But I mean, that's whether that's the kind of support. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's kind of support that centres might be after. If it's support to kind of cover maths support to help the students, then that requires a slightly different approach. Whereas this assumes that they are able to do level 3 maths, and it's just getting them to solve some maths related problems in context. If they've got a problem getting to that level, then that might be something else that we might need to look at. And there are, of course, some resources for, as John pointed out on a separate chat, that for BTEC National, which has units in maths and science. It also has a further maths unit. It has a structural mechanics unit as well. So there might be something you can borrow from the the current BTEC as well. But I'll take it back in terms of, you know, some sort of more support for the maths. But they would, as you've said, Matthew, I think they would need to be at level 3 maths quite soon on their programme. They'd need to be fairly good at maths in order to tackle the T level, pretty much regardless, even if it's not civil engineering, to be honest. But we'll have a look at that.
Yeah, we did talk about that as well with resources. Is again looking at the old BTEC qualification or the BTEC qualifications. There are some good resources there, as well as HN, as someone mentioned. They've looked at using some of the HN materials to help with the delivery and teaching as well. One of the key aspects of moving on, just going to quickly do it. So moving on, one of the key aspects of the T level, and especially the occupational specialisms, are the skills or practical skills needed and that are going to be delivered and tested through the qualification. So I should have the slide up there. So for each occupational specialism, there's practical skills. Within the civils and the surveying, there is surveying to do. There's measurement within all of the specialisms. There's the use of CAD and digital technologies, project planning tools, and use of tools and good housekeeping. So the main ones for delivering there, one more to good housekeeping and use of tools will be assessed on within the practical activities. You need to be able to deliver, and the learners need to demonstrate these skills. And it is the demonstration which is the key point within the T levels of what we need to do. It's the learners will need to demonstrate that, and it will need to be tested in a practical scenario or situation. And we will be looking at that today in terms of the assessments that we have and the new activities that we've got put forward onto the website there we showed you last week, and we'll be going through those as well. So I'm going to, no, that's fine. So I now want to go back onto the website, and I want to look at the new resources that have been put there. And as I said, the main ones that have been put there so far are for the civil engineering. And I'm going to go through one of the student briefs that we have produced as well for the occupational specialisms. So again, just 1 second while it goes over. I'm going to get the page up, and then I will, there we go. So I've got I'll quickly go through a project delivery guide that we've produced. Again, if we go on the website, when you go into the T levels, we've looked at resources. There's teaching and learning resources, there's assessment materials, there's also sort of administration resources. But within the teaching resources and assessment materials, there are project delivery guides, which will guide you through how to deliver the projects within the occupational specialism. So again, I'm just going to quickly share a screen with you. This is the Surveying and Design Project Delivery Guide, which we have produced. Again, these have only been available for about, well, a couple of weeks now. They were put up in November, most of these materials we'll be looking at. So especially if you've been busy as a college, and I know you all have, you may not have had time to look through these. If you did, most of you organising at the beginning of the academic year. So it's really important as well as a centre that you keep up to date, you keep checking the website for new updates, because they are being produced and released throughout the year. So hopefully that's sharing now. So what we've got is, first of all, T-level design, surveying, planning, construction, a project delivery guide. So they are project-based, the assessments and the way this is delivered. I'm going to scroll down, and what we have is, and within most of the, we've seen it within the specification, we saw it last week, is mapping the actual criteria. So you'll find lots of these tables with mapping and where criteria is covered within certain activities or within certain questions within the specification or within exams, etc. So there's broken into tasks. So first of all, you've got your performance outcomes, which performance outcomes are covered by which activities. So if I'm just scrolling through now, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what you then have is your project brief. And again, for all the occupational specialisms, there is a different project briefs that you can use to help with the delivery and assessment of the occupational specialisms. They're also to help with the there's also the sample assessment materials as well. And later on, we've got some exemplar material that we'll look at to go with all this, so you can see where you're actually aiming at with the learners by the end of the qualification and what they should be producing. So in terms of the project brief, there's this is what's based on a railway, or what you call it, someone who's converting one thing into another. And there's quite a lot of that within the surveying. I think the SAM's to do with converting one building, what they could, about redesigning it, building housing, and a lot of the surveying and design is to do with that. It's a lot to do with refurbishment in terms of the surveying. The surveying and design, so that learners will be expected to design something new or design an addition to something else. So it could be maybe converting commercial into residential or vice versa. So, and then once they've done that, you'll be looking at project managing and programming a building project. So initially, the surveying looks into looking at a land or a piece of land, surveying it, measuring it, finding out what's on there. And you can use, in terms of delivering this, it's very useful if you have got a project nearby to use, to look at, and you can take the learners hands-on, which is what you want to be doing from day one, really, is get the learners hands-on, get them looking at a project. So as a centre, what you really want to try and do is try and find a project that you can get the learners involved in from an early stage, so that they can work on that through the year, that they've got something they can see, something where you can take them to do the surveying part of the project, where they can actually do real measurements in the real life. And it's got to be real terms. I know it's been a difficult situation in terms of this year. You've probably heard it, and I heard it on TV today. It's unprecedented times, but this isn't going to continue. And in the future, the T-level will run as it was designed to run, as a hands-on, a real-world qualification where we're getting learners ready for the real working world. So, looking into a project, the learners will then research, do a desk study, do a site study, do a site investigation. They'll use mathematical techniques to look at excavations, to do measurements. They'll then have to use 2 and 3D CAD to design a scheme, to as built and as is designs for areas. You'll then use planning documentation to plan a project, so producing Gantt charts. And then with the surveying and design, there's designer's risk assessments and there's costing exercises involved. So it does, with the surveying and design, it goes into sort of estimating and quantity surveying side of surveying as well. So it's meant, although the occupational specialisms are specialists, there is some opening there within the surveying, for example, to either go into the land surveying side of it or go into the quantity surveying side of things. So there's different routes there for the learners within that. With the building services, there'll be a route within the electrical side or within the mechanical side. So they're the routes the learners may take at a later date. Civil engineering is the same, as you can go more along the routes of the structural mechanics or the project management side of things. So although the occupational specialisms specialise in that occupation, there's also routes within that occupation that learners will have to be made aware of early on, so that they can actually, I might not want to be a structural mechanic, but I do actually want to be a project manager. So they do lead to different areas within the occupation. Within the these briefs and the materials that have been produced by Pearson, there'll always be references for you to use. As we looked last week, we looked for a big list of references in terms of there was the Thames barrier, there was which was the other ones? There was quite a few different projects set out in the core, and they can also be used throughout the qualification. So it's important to use the resources that we've produced. These have also been produced with links to employers. So, and that is another key area of the T levels, is employer engagement. So by using the resources, by using the employers, especially if you've got an employer who's on the list who were involved in the development and they've got a development close to your centre, I would definitely get in touch with those employers. As I said, we looked at them last week, the full list. There's Morgan Still as Arup. There's a list of more than 15 or so who were involved, and they'll be more than happy to help out in some way or other, even if it's just getting an expert witness to come in and do some talks. But it will help with the delivery of the content, and hopefully you can get someone who's involved in your occupational specialism. So if you're doing the civil engineering, I'm sure they'll be able to provide some civil engineer to come in and just do a expert witness at the bare minimum, and involve you in site visits as well. We've then got the tasks involved with the surveying, for example. So the tasks are set out, and that, again, they've already been linked to the criteria above. I'm just looking through them there. And along with these, there's also worksheets, etc., for the learners to work through as well. So what I'm going to quickly do there is, I'm still sharing. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to then go back to the main presentation. There we go. I just want to keep a quick check on the group chats as we're going. That's a good point. So everything in the spec needs to be covered in lessons with all students. I'm just trying to work that one out. In the spec needs to be covered in lessons with all students. Yeah, if it's in the spec, it does need to be covered. So if you are covering a certain occupational specialism, e.g., if we're looking at the the civil engineering one that we have already looked at, all topics do need to be covered by the learners, because all topics will at some point be examined. And although, as anything that is examined and tested, they may not be covered in one series. In the following series, they may be covered. So all content does need to be covered, and all skills also need to be covered. So learners will need to go through all areas of the specification, so you will need to deliver that as a centre. So in terms of civil engineering, you will need to do all the mathematics and calculations. You will need to do the project management. You will need to cover all the health and safety. They will need to do the prioritisation of tasks. They will need to use all the tools and equipment. So you will need to use the surveying. Again, moving over to surveying again, they will need to have had an insight into the surveying equipment required. So that might be an area in terms of resources that you may not have. So looking at the surveying, you will need to have a total station, or the learners will have had to use that piece of equipment. They will have had to use levels. You may have the opportunity to use a laser level. If you sometime to an opportunity to use GPS systems, or at least have an introduction into those. This is especially where employers can help out a lot, because there may be certain equipment you don't have as a centre, but you might be able to get the students some experience on that within a workplace, or get a specialist in to deliver that. Other areas, equipment can be hired. So you can go along those routes. If there's a certain piece of equipment that you need to use, you could hire that piece of equipment. So I hope that clears up in terms of what we need to cover in terms of content, what's within the specification for the occupational specialisms. Now, the only occupational specialism I haven't quite looked at yet was building services, which I wanted to do. So I'm going to have a quick look through the content involved in that. So I'll get a page number for you in a second on the specification. Wait there. And then, as I said, what we'll do is go for 10 minutes through this. We'll have a short break. And then we'll look at the resources and the learner guides and some of the exemplar materials related to the occupational specialisms. Please, anything you specifically want us to cover, please put into the group chat so that we've got time to look at that today, if possible. 1 second, I'm just on civil engineering, I'm just getting to get to the page for building services. And then I just want to quickly look at the content of the building services. So I'm just going to quickly share screen again. I hope the share screening works okay. But if it doesn't, I'm sure, just please put up on the group chat again if we are having issues. So specification. So any second now we should get the specification up for the building services.
Matthew, just to interrupt here, yeah. I have shared on the chat. We have literally, I hadn't realised that they were missing off the website. We literally this morning loaded up some student versions with like images and so on of the briefs, so much more learner friendly. I didn't know if it's worth sharing that if I send you the link, otherwise, unless you're not. I
think I did see something new, like it might have been today. So that's why sometimes I'll put something together. I've noticed we've released something new. So as I said before with the centres, it is really important to keep checking the updates.
Definitely, yeah.
From last week to this week, we have had updates, and there's some really good stuff. So we'll have a quick. As I said, when I've just quickly gone through the building services, we'll have a quick break and I'll just show you some of those, because they're really nice looking documents, actually, the student ones. So
yeah,
I'll
good.
quickly get those up now.
Perfect. I have just sent a specific link in our team chat, but you'll be able to find it from the website anyway. Yeah, because it says student brief as opposed to project delivery guide.
There we go. I should be sharing screen now. All I want to do quickly is just go through the content for the building services. So you'll see a bit of overlap here. You got your health and safety and sustainability. Although generic as a topic heading, they've got these things are related to the occupational specialism. So if it is health and safety and you're covering building services, you're specifically looking at health and safety to the building services when you are covering your occupational specialism. So for, I suppose, with building services itself and health and safety, we're looking at sort of maybe asbestos is going to be a bit more involved, because a lot of the old lagging on pipework used to be asbestos in terms of electrical safety. That's going to be a lot more in depth within building services as it is with the surveying side. So make sure that when you are covering your occupational specialism, that you are the content relates directly to that content. Whereas remember the core we covered last week is more generic. And as I said earlier on today, if you know your occupational specialism, you can teach that core and start going into the occupational specialism side of things at that point. But you've got, as the content says, you've got your concepts of building services, principles of building services engineering, systems, sources of information, the purpose and content. Again, you'll have a lot of that within building services, a lot of books used, a lot of tables used that learners will need to grasp. Then you've got your skills. So your skills, you got to, again, analyse a task. It'll be a building services task. You'll be doing designs for building services is the key to this. Maybe looking at existing systems and how they need to be upgraded to make them fit for purpose. So in terms of, although you'll look at the knowledge and the skills, when you look at the civil engineering performance outcomes, there was, I think, 17 under skill 1. That's just to do with breadth and depth of the actual content itself. So overall, the amount delivered or needs to be delivered will be similar within the different occupational specialisms, but sometimes you'll have to go a bit more depth. There'll be a bit more depth within that content, there'll be a bit more breadth. So the other important aspects I was looking at was really important is how much time should you spend on different parts of the specification. I'm just quickly going to get it up, but there are some breakdowns within the specification about weightings for different performance outcomes, which is a guide you can use to help you when you're setting up your assessment plans, etc., and your teaching plans. So hopefully it's come up there, but I've just gone to civil engineering. Well, I know I'm moving backwards and forwards between the different occupational specialists here, but in terms of civil engineering, you've got 39% for the first 2 outcomes, and you've got 22% for the third outcome. So that is a guide to thinking how much content there is, and in terms of assessment. So make sure you use the entire specification and all the guidance there when you're delivering, and don't get caught into just because you may have a specialist in a certain area of your occupational specialism, ensure that you do cover all parts. And that is a mistake that centres can make and tutors can make. If you're a structural engineer, well, I'm going to cover that because I know it, and not cover something as in much detail. So it's really important, especially within the management of course delivery, to ensure that the areas are getting the correct attention that they need. Okay, and a quick one. These are the tasks, and these aren't necessarily. This is to do with the actual assessment itself, but I've got a little timing schedule there for the actual tasks, and if you look at that within the civil engineering, they're broken down quite evenly actually. So you've got the 8 tasks, There's 9 assessment sessions there because one's broken into A and B. And you've got 2 or 3 hour sessions. Now, I know that within the design, there is a much longer session, which is got to do with drawing and producing models. So again, that task, although it takes longer, probably wouldn't take that much longer to actually deliver before you get to the assessment area. Because when you are doing a design or a drawing, you'll be putting lots of lines in place, lots of shapes, etc. If you're doing a model, it's not much depth, but there's a lot of breadth. It doesn't go too deep into it. If you need to draw 30 lines to draw a house, it takes time, but it's not overly complex. So sometimes there are tasks which do need a bit more time allocated to them within the assessment. But in terms of delivery, it's no more difficult than delivering design of a structural beam. So it's important when you are looking at the timings, although something may take a little bit more time in the assessment, it may not take that much more time in the delivery. Okay, it's coming up to the hour there. I've got to look through we'll look through the new resources, we'll look through the new student book, and I'm going to give Gabriel 10 minutes at the end just to go through the networking things we do. So I've got bad throat at the minute, so I need a drink. So I'm just going to have 5 minutes now. It'll give you time just to have a quick break, and we'll be back then. So any other points before we break, or anything anyone to do, John or Gabriel, before we come back? And I'll just have 5 minutes there.
Thanks, Matthew. I probably won't need 10 minutes, just a couple of minutes just to remind centres and to talk about this new communities page, but if you want to factor that in. But yeah, nothing for me at this stage.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yourself, John, any questions or queries that have come up yet? Or you think of anything I've missed?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, there's good discussion about how best to integrate the placement with the delivery of the core, but especially the occupational specialism. And, a few good ideas have been coming in about maybe incorporating part-time placement 2 days a week, or even delivery during some delivery of the placement during the summer months, which would actually, when you think about it, would give students good experience before they dive into those particular occupational specialisms in the second year. It's good to encourage this sort of sharing of ideas between centres, and so the group chat has been interesting in relation to that. I encourage people to continue maybe to pop ideas or suggestions. I know the placement is outside of the technical qualification and rests with another authority, but it is, to be pragmatic, we do have to blend it with the delivery of the core and the occupational specialism, and it ideally will be of a great it'll contribute to delivery of the occupational specialism, and to that end we should maybe ensure that the employers become part of the course team, be familiar with the content of the occupational specialism and the type of assessment then that the students will have to prepare for, and perhaps contribute to that. I know that's ideal world stuff, but interesting to hear if some centres are what sort of cooperation with employers that they're actually achieving at the moment.
Yeah, that's a really good points there. Yeah. Well, I said we've gone on a little bit, but we're just on a break. It'd be interesting to know if anyone has, or anyone who has or is using employers at the moment, within the assessment and those people who've got placement set up, if you can add that into the group chat too, that'd be really good. And I'm sure that's an area where Gabriel will be interested in terms of the networking events we're having as well. Okay, I said I just need 5 minutes. I'll get a quick drink and for yourselves just to freshen up, and then we'll be back and we'll look at some of the new resources that have been produced. Thank you. I'll see you in 5. hello all. I will stop screen sharing. Just realised. You've all had time to freshen up. I'll quickly have a little look at the group chat quickly. Yeah, there's just a couple of comments there. One other point, just don't know if everyone's back yet, but one other quick point is with the group chat, we just this was again discussed last week quickly, but the easiest way, if you want a copy of the group chat, is just to if you scroll over it and copy it, you can then stick it into a word processing document such as Word, and then you'll be able to save a copy of that and look back over it if you need to. It'll also have any of the links in that we may have added as well. So yeah, that's by far the easiest way to do that. So if you do want to copy, just copy the whole group chat and then stick it over into a Word document, and then you can look at it in your own time. So in terms of specific, I said we're not here today really to read through the entire specification. So what we're here to just introduce the specialisms themselves. So hopefully we've done enough detail of how the specification is set out, because what I want to move on to next is the assessment. Now, there are further training scheduled for someone's just kicked in. There's a further training scheduled in, I think it's April. Is it April, John? I think it's April, isn't it?
Yes, Matt. Further training. So this series was getting started, and the next series is getting ready to assess, where we'll be looking at separately the core exam, the employer set project, and then the occupational specialism and the assessment surrounding those. So that starts, I think it's the 22nd of April is the first one of those.
And well, you're all actually on the training course now, so you do need, you probably hopefully know how to find the training events. But anyone who's just been stuck on the course from management or someone else couldn't make it, etc., if you go onto the website, I'll quickly go into it now, but there is the engagement hub and the upcoming training events. So I'll just quickly share that. Actually, I've got it up now on my PC. In fact, it might be a good time to just, for Gabriel at the same time, just to talk about yours, if I'm actually there now, if you're there, Gabriel. I'll just quickly just show you the page. Hopefully that's sharing. If you just go onto the homepage for the T-level in construction, design, surveying and planning, you've got teaching, support and training on there, and there's up and coming training events. So if you click that, you'll see today's event, tomorrow's event, and the up and coming events will be there, and you'll be able to book onto them from there. And there's also the construction engagement hub. So yeah, if you just say what you want to say quickly there, Gabriel, it probably fits into where we are now.
Thanks, Matthew. So the bits that I was only going to talk about was that you've just mentioned with regards to upcoming training. If you, as you're sharing that screen now, see upcoming training events, that we've got the 22nd of April, getting to know the spec, 23rd of April, getting to know the spec, the second part. There will be some getting started events, the dates to be confirmed on that. And that, again, that's probably for people who are starting in this year. And not people who are already on programme. Getting ready to assess, as I mentioned, that's the core is the 28th of April, the ESP is 29th, and the OCSPECs are 30th of April. And then we've got networking sessions. We had one yesterday. We've got one on the 18th of May and the 6th of July. So these are all opportunities to do that. The other thing is I would like to highlight that we've got a new community page for the T-level in construction, because we realise the value of these types of events are very good with the group chat. So we thought, it depends. Not everyone can obviously come to every event. So we just thought we'd also host a community page, and I will put that in the group chat now. and I urge you all to join that so that you can share good practice with other centres or ask questions. The subject advisor, Everett, and myself are also going to join that so that we can chip in with any help you want. Sometimes raising a query through customer service, for example, could be quite lengthy to get through to me or the right person. So if we're on that and monitoring it, which we will be, then that's another way of doing it. We will make sure there's a link to this new community from that T-level website as well.
Gabriel, do you want to also mention the event that you had on Tuesday and those update events, and how participants can contribute to those?
Yeah, so the event on Tuesday was the a network event. So I did briefly just say that there will be more network events, but also that event, some of the feedback was from 2020 providers about what's happening this summer. And as you all know, there's been a big announcement about grades, teacher assessed grades for general quals, BTECs and T-levels. But actually the detail of that, the detail is not yet available as to how this will actually work. So what we're doing is we've been consulting with centres who are already live with the T-level and working out what this basket of evidence, they're calling it, what it will need to contain in order to support your grades. And I think there will be some extra support that will give you, for example, you've got the sample, the SAMs and the ADSAMs, and you've got guide standard exemplification material, which is a bit like sample learner work for the high grade and for a low grade. We're going to put some out there as well for like a middle grade. So give you, that's one of our ideas anyway, to give you a good idea of how to place your learners on the grading scale when you've got this evidence. And that evidence may be from mock exams, it may be from interactions, coursework, maybe from some of the free resource materials, the projects you've got them to do. And you should hopefully be building up a picture. And the more sort of robust the evidence, the better it will be, the more likely your grade will be accepted as the final grade when we moderate it, when we do our QA process. So there will be more at the end of this month, I think, possibly this month, there will be some events to explain that tag process for those of you who've entered learners this summer.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that. Yeah. So yeah, it's just to reiterate what Gabriel was saying. It is your best opportunity to be able to talk and communicate with Pearson about the qualification is through these events. And like, if you book onto a training event and you have a specific question you want to ask, you can just put it in, even if it's not to do directly with that training session itself. If you put it in or put it into the group chat straight away, we can get from myself or John or whoever else is involved in that training, we'll put it straight away up to Pearson, and it will get heard a lot quicker than if you have to go through as Gabriel was saying, through things getting email through, because in terms of large organisations, things do take a little bit of time. So it does give you that although it's not face to face, it's as near as it is at the moment, really. Okay, so what I wanted to do next was keeping the new sample assessment material. It was, no, it's not. It's the teaching learning materials that we wanted to look at. So I've got, there we go. I'm going to now share that. Where are we? There we go. Sorry about this. Oh, I'll get it eventually. So we're going Chrome. Share. So hopefully coming up now is the new materials that have been released. I said, yeah, I'm glad Gabriel reminded me there, because I started looking at what we were looking at last week, and then I thought that looks new stuff, and it is. It's just put out the 11th. That's today, is it? Must have been put out last night.
Yes, literally this morning. It was this morning, yeah, because we realised some were missing, and these it's the student briefs that have gone up, which is the fancy stuff with the images to help give you the direct to students.
So again, they're all there. So you just come straight into the main page. We're on the teaching and learning materials. There's always good stuff added in teaching and learning materials. I've always used it. Even before I was with Pearson, I was just teaching a centre. I used to use a lot of the things that were produced by Pearson, and a lot of people don't. But there's a lot of good stuff put on the website. So again, this is hopefully you can see this, but there's a student brief for the building services design. All pretty and colourful, and there's first of all an introduction to the project, and this will work alongside the project itself that I was showing you before. So this is the development of a hotel, and again this is there. So you've got talking about the ventilation system, and again what is included in this are the specific outcomes and fund specification, because it has been written from that. So you've got analysed building services.
Sorry, are you sharing that, Matthew?
Is it not sharing?
No,
not sharing, or is it?
No.
I will stop and reshare. Sorry about this. Sometimes when you go into something and you change the screen within this, although it does say sharing, I will hopefully and I'll wait about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Is that coming through now? It should be ventilation system design.
Yeah, got it.
It's written at the top.
Got it.
That's brilliant. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I'm not, because I can't actually see what's coming through. Sometimes it does struggle. So I'll have to go back to the top just quickly. Yeah, this is. You've got the just the title page, student brief. It says it clearly on there. So this is a building services design. They're there for all the occupational specialisms. So there's one for each one, and it is what it says. It's a student guide. It's just written a bit differently. It's a bit easier to understand, I'd say. Less technical or less specification is included. It just the key things that the learner needs. So you've got a task nicely broken down, and it's got the performance outcome that it's covering, and then you've got the instructions for the student. So you can use these directly from the website with the learners. You might also use them where if you've actually got a project, as I was saying before, if you're using a project, you could use this and just, instead of just change the activity slightly to suit something that's actually hands-on or real. But you don't have to do that. You can just use it as is as well. So it gives you the opportunity to use it one way or the other. You've got an activity 2. Again, look at ranges, blah, blah, blah. So they are what they say. Links to building regs are in there. There's other links for the learners to use. Again, links to the building regs. So, and again, some lovely pictures. So,
if I could just say, Matt, looking at this document, and again, these have just been posted, but I'm thinking it would be useful to share the likes of this document with the placement employer to, particularly in relation to the occupational specialism, to give them a flavour of the type of stuff the students will be assessed in relation to, and maybe to tailor then the placement and the sort of experience that the students are given.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally agree with that. You also, I probably should have mentioned, but you want to ensure that when you are working with employers, they will need to know about the course anyway. So you do need to ensure you are sharing what the learners are covering with the employer throughout the delivery, so that hopefully you can either adjust your delivery to suit what they might be doing in the workplace, or if you got a good employer who's saying, we are doing this at the moment, have you got any openings, or is there any areas where you're doing this on a site? You might be able to link it that way, so they actually are doubling up within the classroom and the workplace. But again, that is ideal world scenario, as you mentioned before, John, which is sometimes difficult. So,
I think,
go on.
Sorry,
Carry on.
it's difficult, isn't it? But I was just really wanting to reiterate something you touched upon earlier, that the purpose of these ones for the occupational specialist is less about teaching. These resources are much more about trying to get learners used to that project approach in solving the problems and the step-by-step thing, because that will basically mirror what the occupational specialism assessment is at the end of the year. So it's to get them working in this kind of problem solving in context, and the stages of, you've got a design brief to respond to, you've got a problem with it, you've got to adapt, and so on and so forth. So that is the idea of these, and it's not so much about, you probably teach the theory of that perhaps separately to these guides, but that's what the Occ specialism resources are for.
That makes it. It's difficult because they are so project based. You do want to try and project base your delivery if you can, because if you just break it down into classroom, then and then doing a project like this separately, it can be difficult for the learners just to swap from one to the other. So as a centre, it's something you'll decide as a centre anyway. I'm sure you've, even through BTEC, we used to deliver projects, and I used to do some project-based things, especially with, say, you're doing with certain topics, and you've got to make sure throughout the T levels that you are getting the students ready for completing this project-based assessment, because it is quite a long assessment that they're going to have to carry out at the end of this course. Minutes ago, but do come in April. We'll have the next training where they look more into detail of the assessment, but it is a long assessment approach where the learners have got to concentrate and be involved within this project for a significant amount of time. You're talking over probably 4 weeks or so to complete the whole project or assessment, maybe slightly longer in some cases, depending on the assessment approach and what's available, and the learners, how they're actually how they are I can't think of the word anyway. I'll get back to it in a sec. Their mode of attendance, I was going to say, because some learners will attend them differently. That's all I was going to say there. Okay. Further to the student brief, so I was just going to quickly, these are from the 18th of February, the last, so it was only a couple of weeks ago that we had the extra worksheets and etc. for the civil engineering activities. So we've got the, again, this, student brief, look at my student, there's another new student brief then from the 10th of March for civil engineering. Oh, that must have been just put up a day before. I can see that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Matt,
what we
can you
started to look at was the
audience view?
Sorry.
Just checking audience view. I'm not sure.
What's it on now? Sorry. Oh. Is it just on the normal? Is it just on the PowerPoint at the moment?
It seems to be loading. It's blank at the moment.
I'll quickly do it. Wait there. I'll just have to. I wish there was a little corner. I'm going to. What's the best thing to do? I'll just change pages and just see what happens.
Yeah, the slides are still working okay. It's just that if you were presenting anything separate, then we can see.
That's fine. Okay. Along with, where were they now? Oh, the other bit we've got with the specimen. There we go. Sample assessment. It was those, yeah. So, do we need to look at there's the exemplification. So I'm going to quickly go now onto the sample assessment material then. I could walk you through this civil engineering, but I said it's best for you as a centre just to download those documents and have a look through them. With all the new civil engineering tasks that are related. So again, it's just getting learners used to the project-based way of the assessment, really. So I'm going to now go back onto that and share again. I'm going to look at the sample assessment material now and the exemplar material that we slightly discussed earlier. So it's where you're aiming to get your learners to by the end of this course, really, or the qualification. So again, on the website, we should have now coming up under the sample assessment material. We looked at this last week. Hopefully that's come up now, but you should have the core exams at the top. There's a list of formulas and things for the core exams, and then employer set projects. And then as we go down, we have at the very bottom of there's some zip files. Now these zip files contain all the sample assessment materials in for each of the occupational specialisms. So that just has the tasks and the extra sheets, etc., that are associated with those tasks that you can use to get the students ready for the assessment process. What we also have on here are exemplification materials. Gabriel slightly mentioned these, saying we're also looking at a middling one. So at the moment, for each specialism, there is a basic pass, I would say. So this is a learner who is just going to pass the course, and someone who has got a good grade, as in a distinction. Now, there may be, with anything with exemplification material, these aren't specific. These could be different for different learners. They could be done it slightly different ways to get the same grade because of how the actual qualification is graded. So this is just an idea of what you'd be looking at, where you're getting your students to by the end of, or by the time you're looking at assessing them. So if they're not at these levels, or if they're not even at the pass level, then you need to think, okay, we need to work on this, that, or the other in order to get them to that level so that they can take the assessment successfully. So, and I'm going to quickly open one up. I will look at the surveying one because I think I know a little bit about this one. I may have even have had a foot in writing part of it. So this is a project. I think it's at pass level, and I think what I want to look at is just maybe some of the, like there's reports there. I'm not going to read for about what. Just looking at actually some of the drawings, etc. And what's so. I think I'm just going to scroll down. Is it? Hopefully that's sharing. But even if you look, if we're looking, this is for a pass level. There's still significant amounts of work within this document. I think at the end there should be some drawings. So yeah, if you can look, hopefully that's sharing. I'm going to stop and reshare because sometimes it doesn't quite like it. And there, share. So this is a pass grade. So this is basic drawing that's been done for a design of a ground floor. You can see it's not overly neatly done. Within that, it kind of makes sense. So there's a design for a ground floor. There's doors in, there's stairs, etc. The doors don't close into each other, and you can use, it's a usable space. Going down again, same as. So not the neatest drawings, but actually things all make sense within that. There is, I think, as well, maybe a 3D drawing in a second. Is there a project plan? Yeah, there's a simple Gantt chart produced. So a piece of software has been used. It's not just hand drawn. It's industry standard. So even at a pass level, things have to be some form of industry standard. It's not a. We are looking at getting learners into employment, so and being partial or competent by the end of his qualification. So even to pass the qualification, there's significant amount of work to be done. The learners have to have a good knowledge. So you can see there's a report, and they are significant. And learners need to be aware of the kind of input they're going to have to put in from day one. So, and they can also see this information themselves if they go onto the website. There's a simple 3D design. Looks like it's just a simple piece of 3D software being used for that. You've got elevations. It's a model. You've got things that are missing from that. I suppose it doesn't look like there's a lot of attention being put into, say, size of windows, things like that. The design isn't the most pretty design, but it's still a usable design. And then there's some floor plans taken from that design. So a piece of modelling software has been used. You've produced a drawing that is from that. So the learners have to be able to use the software even at a pass level. Then there's a short presentation being carried out with some presentation notes. Again, so that is a pass example. I'm just looking at page 39, and it's a significant piece of work. That's the key to this. And at the end of this, there is a commentary about why grades have been awarded. So it's really important as an assessor to use these documents to think, okay, so why has that been awarded, or why has this been awarded? I think that's what Gabriel was saying about the TAGs as well, the teacher assessed grades, to use this information that Pearson's produced, or that the exam board's produced, in order for evaluating why you may have awarded certain grades. So that is an example of a pass piece of work. It's a significant project that's been completed by the learner. I think we're on a blank screen at the moment, but I'll go back now. There we go. So it's a significant project that's been produced. It's got tabled, it's got drawings, we've got reports, there's calculations in there. Yeah, it is. You can see it for yourselves. It's a significant piece of work. So that is for a pass. I'm just going to quickly close and reopen and show you a distinction level for the same. And if I stop, I think I'll just stop it and restart the share screen, because it doesn't like it when you jump around too much. 1 second. Sorry about this. Share. It's not significant. That should have opened now, hopefully. So we've got design planning, surveying. And what we've got now is a slightly longer document. It's not hugely longer, because often a distinction isn't necessarily the size of the qualification, how much this learner's written. It's the actual depth and the accuracy which is more important. And you'll find that especially in the civil engineering, it will be the accuracy that is looked at more so than anything else, especially with calculations. So again, you've got the report starting off. Again, it's when we look at the end, we'll see why better grades have been awarded. Again, you've got a table, same as you had for the past, slightly more information in it. But what I want to see now is the drawings and the designs, just to see how they compare. Okay, now what was missing last time, there wasn't such a broken down example with the costings. So there was a costing exercise done, costs were put in, they weren't, the clarification wasn't put in there. See, you've got other parts of the assessment are just putting numbers in, so they'll be exactly the same whether it's pass or distinction. It'll just be one of them will have more correct answers, and then there'll be more evaluative work about why things have been done. So again, in terms of the learner, included on the drawings this time. There are breakdowns about what the walls are constructed out of. Insulation's been added in there. There's a few more details included. There's more accuracy to the drawing in terms of you can see the landing there downstairs. You can actually get up the stairs, things like that. So the design has been thought about a little bit more than the PASS learner. And then we looked at the Gantt chart before. I know that is a sideways drawing, but the Gantt chart, I think with the previous one, there was very few items that were crossing over, and the critical path wasn't sort of run through. It didn't really follow it. There's a lot more activities included within the Gantt chart. That's the kind of Gantt chart you'd expect to see actually on a proper project, which is what you're looking at, I suppose, if you are looking at a distinction learner. And the last little bit, hopefully, is it still going? In terms of the reports, there's more technical information within the reports. And then we've got a design for a building. So the learner in this case has included a 3D cross through of the house that they've designed. You can see the sizes on all the rooms, etc. Designs a little bit. I suppose the roof designs took a bit more care and attention. You can see things like the eaves stick out past the walls, things like that. So there's just attention to details being included by the learner, and that's the difference really between the PASS and the distinction. They've used it looks like Revit or something's been used for this with room colorations, etc. But it is. You'll see from the work that's produced, it is significant. The learners need to know their stuff to be able to do this. They are given a limited amount of time to produce this within the assessment windows. So it's got to be this. You do need to share this with the learners, or share what is expected, so that they do know this for the assessment. Sharing it right at the beginning, I don't know what you need to build students up to certain to what they want to get out, or what they need to produce. If you show someone this is what you got to produce at the end of the course right at the start, it might be a bit too much, but you build up to that. But yeah, I'd really advise all centres to use this information, and especially the commentaries at the end. So the commentaries, again, it's students including, these will relate to the marking grids that are within the sample assessment materials, which I haven't actually shown you yet, have I? I could quickly I'll quickly show you the marking grids, and then I've really gone through what we want to today. So one second, I'm going to just quickly stop there. I'm going to open up the SAM, and at the end of the SAM, I'll just show you a quick mark scheme, that's all. For those, I know I've got them open separately. Again, I'd also advise you to download the the documents there in the zip file and keep those safe as well. So,
yeah, Matt, if I could just say, one of the upcoming training sessions in the Getting Ready to Assess series in April, we'll be going into detail into the application of the marking scheme, and the various parts of it, level-based marking, etc. And to show, yeah, and it, as you say, it will be a very useful tool for the teaching staff to understand actually how the students' work is going to be assessed, and also for the students to understand how it's going to be assessed, so they can tailor their efforts to achieving marks. That's
probably the main difference. Is most tutors now should be used to for quite a few years, there was no sort of level-based marking really within sort of construction in terms of BTEC, and that's what's changed over the last few years. But it's not new now, so people should be aware that. That's all I was going to show quickly, was just that one page there. So you got where you got your bands, and 1 second, I'll just quickly share the bands, and then we'll call it a day from there and see if there's any further questions or things that we want to share. So share screen, I think it was an application window, and it wasn't, it might have been that one, I don't know, where's it gone? It might have been that one, was it? No, it's not the easiest to share screens on this at times. Anyway, to be quite, I don't need to look into it. As I said, John will be covering that anyway. But yeah, what there are within this sample assessment material, we have got a level-based mark scheme. So when you're marking off the work, what you do is you give the learners a number. If it's a 9-mark question, between 1 and 3, or it'd be 4 and 5 and 6 and 9, or whichever way it's broken down, and you've got to decide where your students or learner sits and then give the marks accordingly. But using that exemplar material will really help with that, so you can see actually is that a higher or lower mark, and why have they missed out on marks. But that's really for today, I think. What have we got? We've got 15 minutes left, but as I said, I can sit here and read through the specification with you. I can go through all the materials, but it's really you as a centre to get hold of those materials. And I'm just sorry, when I see something in the group chat step up, I just like to see what's going on. Yes. Yes, that's a good one, Gabriel. And centre has a good question there by John. Has any centre arranged placements aligned with the occupational specialism yet? First of all, how have centres got on with getting the placement sorted? How's that gone this year? If you a general, I can see it as being a slight issue in terms of, especially with the pandemic has gone on. But it's just what I said, one of those things that we've got to cope with for this year, and it's probably slightly into next year, but hopefully after that, things will settle down and we'll be able to run the course as it was designed to run in the first instance. I'm sure none of us were predicting this would happen, especially with setting up a new course right at the start, really. So the first learners who have started it have had a bit of a difficult situation, really. Yeah, that's a really good question there, Chris. A really good point. The problem to get suitable employers, especially in rural locations. What I would say is definitely in those cases, if you are struggling, you need to really try and get involved within the networking events we're having, and also if you contact any of the if you look at surrounding areas, see if there's any developments nearby which you might be able to use, especially with those employers who are on the development team within the qualification, and say, look, can you please help out with this? And I'm sure they'll be more than willing, and it does help them as well. So getting expert witnesses to travel, hopefully maybe to do a talk, etc. Because there's various ways to look at and get involved within employability. Any other? So from there, I think if we look over what we were meant to cover today, no, that's session 4. So session 4 is tomorrow. We're going to be planning for external assessment. I've probably gone into a little bit of that today, but I'm just going to quickly go back to the agenda, just see if there's any points I've missed. Teaching techniques to draw out on the core content. Yeah, we discussed that slightly. Practical tasks. Yeah, we talked about that. Discussion and feedback, which we're doing now. And conclusion, any outstanding questions. Any top tips?
Oh, it's just putting that question out there, Matt, to see if any centres have, those centres who have already started, have they had any successes or?
Yeah, it's really important just to share information. But as I said today, I'm with what we've covered. I think we're fine. I'm happy with what we've got up to today, and we'll continue with this tomorrow. But we'll look a lot more detail into the actual, as I said, the exams and external assessment tomorrow, and that'll be across all the areas. Go on.
Sorry, I was just thinking about the tips for delivery, and I guess most people are planning the delivery and not actually delivering just yet because the core is so large. It takes up a whole year, really. But it goes back to an earlier point, and we had some chat about it with regards to delivering multiple specialism, because the centres that I've spoken to, one or two have said that they want to be able to offer it to all, whatever the learner's choice is, but in reality, it's not really feasible. And we talked about some of the topics that potentially could be co-taught. And I think you were saying that
the project management's an area. It could be.
Okay, and things like surveying and some of the skills in that. Do you think, obviously, when they get assessed, it will be in the context of their specialism? But do you think there's any scope for some of the practical stuff to be co-taught, or do you think you'd have to separate them off?
Yeah, the surveying you can, because because although the civil engineers also do setting out, it's so closely linked to the land surveying, etc., that you could do that co-taught. The biggest problem is that I think you get the building services is less so in terms of linking up, say, with the surveying. There's not an awful lot of crossover there. But there is also, with all of them, there's the project management side of things, so that can easily be co-taught. Although the health and safety specialises, that could also go across with it within 1 second. My lead's dropped out of my laptop and I'm going to have to plug it in very quickly. There we go. Yeah, but that's fine, yeah. So it's something as well for centres to think about for tomorrow is anyone who can, areas where they have are cross co-delivering, be quite interested with.
Yeah, because I think that would be the limiting factor. Unfortunately, it's a reality that centres cannot always offer, for example, every optional BTEC unit because they don't have either the expertise or resources to do lots of different classes. And just thinking about it in practical terms, we have 4 occupational specialisms available, but in reality, how many centres are going to be able to co-teach up to 4? Probably not many, if any, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. I'm just looking at that. We were trying to find placement spaces. Some really interesting points about people trying to find placements based on the students' wishes rather than the occupational specialism. And then you've got the counter argument there about the led by what's available by employers now. However much the students want to do an occupational specialism, the work out there is what's going to guide what job they're going to get in the future, and that's the whole crux of the qualification. But I did mention earlier about even within the occupational specialisms, there's routes you could take there. So there's always the project management route. There's the health and safety route, actually. There's a good job within health and safety. Then there's a design route across. There's a design route within all the actual specialisms, although it's quite specific. You could easily branch out then into a more design related occupation. Yeah, I'm still just reading the group chat, but yeah, I've finished in terms of the training for today in terms of what I want to talk about. All I want to do now is we stay on in terms of video chat. So I'd like to thank Gabriel today. You've been really useful and some really good insights there. And John, your input was awesome again. And I look forward to working with you tomorrow.
Cheers, Matt. Many thanks.
No, I said we will be around on the lines, and if we see any point, I'm going to mute now, but when I see any points, I might just talk about them quickly. So thank you for your time today, and hopefully see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Matt. That was really good. I've just responded to a couple of chat comments about the alignment to the occupational specialism, but I guess everyone's finding their feet, aren't they? And we'll just have to play it by ear to an extent.
And just a quick one for everyone: if you want to copy the group chat, don't forget to do that before you go off. So yeah, just quickly go on, just copy it up, and then you've got the links and things there that you want.